All right, what's going on, Alec? What's going on?
Hey, not much. Just, hanging out. Had a long day at work.
Well, I was
Uh,
just thinking while you're in the neighborhood, while you're in the drifting in your bedroom in the same quadrant.
this actually isn't even my bedroom. This is just a spare room, but it does have a bunch of my stuff in it. So,
Sure. I thought maybe while we're here, we could just talk about video games, and in particular, video
okay,
games that define us. And
okay.
collectively, we can each do five, and then collectively we'll have 10 games. You could say define Tarqaron. Technically.
10 games that define Tarqaron. Yeah, that's fair.
It was very hard for me. I had a list. I got it down to a list of like 18 here. Don't look.
Yeah. You were telling me. Yeah, you were like, I got like 18 games, and I was like, I figured out my five already. Then after you said that, that actually had me like reconsidering. Okay, maybe I should actually think this out a little bit more thoroughly. So I did, and I did. I actually have different ones than I initially thought. So,
Ultimately, it came down to like the definition. Because I got this from things on Twitter mostly. It was like a big trend for a while back in the day. Like they did for like film. It was first like a film trend. There was like five films that define you, kind of thing.
yeah, I saw that on Instagram actually.
And then
Um,
it came up on for video games as well later.
okay.
So um,
Well, I do like this idea a lot, so
yeah, so it
let's.
was tough trying to decide like is it a game? Should it be games that I played when I was growing up? Should it be games now? Like to what extent? To like it was a lot of factors to weigh in.
Right. Yeah, no, when I initially thought it was like, oh, just like five really great games, and then I was like, well, no, I should take into consideration ones that were important to me developmentally, and ones that I just like in general, or say something about what I like in games, or games that just impacted me in some way. So,
I like to think of it as like if someone were to come up to you that didn't know you at all, that you could
mhm,
present them with five games to be like this is representative of me
yeah,
and me as a gamer, you know.
right.
I still don't have. I have six on my list, and I'm gonna just figure it out as I go.
Okay, sounds good. Do you want me to start then?
Sure, we could alternate, I guess, back and forth.
Okay, so I'm gonna start with one that's probably um, a lot of you who would know me know that I love this game. It's kind of a it's kind of a response that everyone would hear in some point or another, and that game's Ocarina of Time, Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time.
Okay,
Um, that game was
I've heard
very
of it.
important to me growing up. You've heard of it. It's a little game that Nintendo put out. It was very important to me growing up. I I grew up watching my brothers play video games a lot of the time. And it wasn't until like much later they allowed me to like actually play their copy of Ocarina of Time. I think I was like 10 by the time I was able to, which felt back then that felt like an eternity because it came out when I was like 7. So
Hmm.
in fact I had to wait 3 whole years to play that game. It was just like agony. But that game really captures or like captured at least at the period of time a sense of adventure. When you first get out into that open world Hyrule field, prior to that, it was all on a 2D plane. Everything else was 2D plane, all the Zelda and stuff that I'd watched before then. But like coming out into a huge, expansive environment like that, um, getting swept up in this epic story of, a villain taking over the world, and then you having to go to all these different mystical places and um, in an attempt to stop him, save the princess, all that good stuff that Zelda's always really good at doing. Um, and just really just having a great soundtrack. Um, I argued for a long time. I was like, these graphics are still really good, even to the GameCube era. But I was kind of just blinded a little bit by childhood fascination. But I still adore that game. I still go back to it fairly regularly. It's been a while. Actually, it's maybe been a couple years since I played it, so I should probably get back to it at some point again. But um, there was a span of time where I was playing it regularly every year, um, doing different things in it, trying like a three heart challenge, trying like a there's like a glitch filled like super hard version of the game where it's like it you force a bunch of restrictions on yourself. You play dungeons out of order. It's really fun. It was very fun. I had a lot of fun doing that. So, um, and then playing the 3DS version, which came out in 2011, and which is probably going to be how I visit the game for the most part in the future. But yeah, that game was very important to me growing up. It's still kind of like a high bar to me in terms of like nostalgia, I
Mm-hmm.
guess. It's hard to really separate. Many better games have come out since then, but it's really hard for me to separate those emotions, those of childhood from how much I love that game. But yeah, that's definitely a big one for me.
And that's interesting. An interesting thing about video games is that certain games, if you just don't play them at the right time, then they're just not gonna have the same impact as like I never played Ocarina of Time growing up, so it has like nowhere near the same impact. Like even
Yeah,
I only played it a couple of years ago for the first time, so it's like it's not gonna have near the impact as if I was growing up with it.
right.
So everything in context, it makes it a lot more important.
Absolutely.
So for me, shoot. Well, the one that I knew had to be on there without a doubt. Also, are we doing this out of order? I'm guessing in any particular order.
It's kind of I'm doing it sort of. I was kind of thinking chronologically, but I'm just kind of gonna wing it in terms of
I
the
didn't
order.
have a
So
ranking. I just kind of had the list. But
yeah,
so, Animal Crossing on the
that
GameCube.
that makes a lot of sense. Knowing you,
Animal Crossing is like one of the things that I talk about the most. One of the most beloved video games, and I played every Animal Crossing game that came out, and still the GameCube one is the one I keep going back to. Like I think Animal Crossing New Leaf on the 3DS is probably the definitive best version of the game, but the GameCube one has like so much more. It's so much more impactful to me because I can still remember renting it from Blockbuster and and like back when my sister even played video games. She like stopped playing them with us after we were young, but it was like me, my brother, and my sister all were part of the same town and everything, and that's something I just haven't had for years now because it's always been a solo thing after that.
hmm.
But Animal Crossing, there's just something about it that's so unique, and it's kind of one of the first things that sparked my love of like simulation games that uh, most people don't appreciate as much as I do. Games like Harvest Moon and The Sims and Animal Crossing are all kind of a big part of what I love in gaming now. And just Animal Crossing is something you can always go back to, and it was a way to escape, and it's like a daily thing you could go to as well. So I knew that was the one above all else I knew had to be on here. And I've been waiting for years for a new one to come out, so now I got Animal Crossing Switch finally,
Yeah,
hopefully soon this year.
that's that's probably going to be this year. I hope for your sake. I've never been as big on Animal Crossing, but I know it's a very cherished series for a lot of people. So I'm kind of excited for them for that
Yeah,
to be coming out. So
and that's one of those
um,
games that like you either get it or you don't. It's like very
yeah,
very particular like niche kind of style in the game. It's not something like an open world RPG where you can like clearly see the appeal. Everyone can clearly see the appeal. It's like if you don't have this, if you're not into this type of game, you're just not going to be into it. But if
yeah.
you are, then you'll fall in love with it.
They need to bring those NES games back from the GameCube version.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
that's
It was a really unique feature, even just in the GameCube
yeah.
version, and I honestly still like the whole top-down perspective they did in the GameCube, as opposed to like going around the globe, which they do in the later games.
Hmm.
But it's just a very nostalgic game for me.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so another big one that I have on here is I'm trying to think. I'm trying to pick which one I'm going to go with next.
Yep.
Um, I think I'm going to do Kingdom Hearts 2. Will be the next one I'll put up.
Okay.
So I was kind of a latecomer in terms of most people to the Kingdom Hearts series. I didn't play the first one until I think it was the gap year I took um, between high school and college, and I liked it. It was a fun game. I really enjoyed it. And then I pretty much played them in release order, which is the way when I recommend people, if you really want to get into the series, play them in the release order because the story is just convoluted as all get out, and that's the only way. If you really want to, that's the only way to play them that they'll make sense. Or you can just probably just watch videos. I don't know. I don't care. Kingdom Hearts 2 is still, I think, kind of the high mark of the series. Birth by Sleep is really good. I really loved Kingdom Hearts 3. But there's something that Kingdom Hearts 2 just does just a little bit more, at least in my memory. Having played it, like it was like maybe 8 years ago the first time I played it. And it just really brings me back. It's another kind of nostalgic, good sort of good times feeling. Brings me back to the end of my freshman year of college. I started playing it. Just that whole opening scene of the whole opening sequence. A lot of people complain about. I completely fell in love with the setting and Roxas as a character in the beginning of that game, and the soundtrack of that game has just meant so much to me throughout the years. But it's not just that; it's the weird blend of Disney, which is something I absolutely love, and Square Enix's crazy out there art style and art direction that somehow they make work. It's very interesting, varied gameplay. The game is always kind of trying to throw something new at you. It's like, oh, okay, here you have to switch up your battle tactics a little bit because these guys can't get hit when they're in the moonlight, which is the Pirates of the Caribbean stuff. Or hey, now you're flying the gummy ship and you're doing like Star Fox style levels when you're going between world to world. Or now you're doing a random musical adventure with Ariel and friends. And even though that part's not nearly as fun as the other ones, the game is always throwing something different and unique and interesting at you. And a lot of games sometimes, especially when they're longer RPGs, can sometimes hit a groove where they're not giving you something new like all the time like that. And Kingdom Hearts is just always kind of throws something new at you like that, and that's something I really love about the series. All of the games play differently too, but Kingdom Hearts 2, I think, with reaction commands and with just you can beat the game by mashing attack if you really want to. But there's actually a lot of like really interesting, if you're playing on harder difficulties, a lot of interesting strategies and things that you have to sort of implement and think about when you're playing. So it really takes the action part of action RPG seriously, and I've always just found it fun. Characters are some of my favorite in video games, and yeah, I could go on for a long time about Kingdom Hearts 2, but definitely a big one for me. It was strange because it was like the year after I played that game, I was already getting nostalgic for it, which like that was kind of when that started to happen, and I was like, how am I getting nostalgic for this game? I just played it last year, and I was like already kind of wanting to play it again, and that has happened to me for some other games since, like Breath of the Wild, for instance, but. Yeah, there's just some. I love that game. So yeah, big one.
So for me, my next one, I guess I'll talk about is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate.
Ooh.
So I
just came out a few months ago, man.
Yeah,
that's great.
I felt like I had to have a newer one in here because
yep,
to be representative of me. I mean, I still love gaming so much, so. Not only is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate my favorite in the series, but also it's just one of the most important series in gaming to me as well. Because I grew up playing Smash Bros. On the N64, played Melee, and played all of them. Though there was like an interesting change after Brawl, once I got into the Wii U versions when I actually started getting good at Smash Bros. And then into Smash Bros. Ultimate. Good. Smash Bros. Ultimate is when I actually started watching like competitive, and that's a huge thing I'm really into now. which is like no other game competitive scene interests me at all. Really, so, like, this is the one. Well, this and actually Melee I watched competitive too, but I never played it. I haven't played Melee since I was younger, really. So I feel like I had to put Ultimate. Even though if you'd asked me back when I played Melee, I would have said Melee. And while I was playing Brawl, I was always saying that was my favorite game of all time, Super Smash Bros. Brawl. But then Smash Bros. Wii U came out. I'm like, no, this one's better. And then got into the competitive scene where like they don't value Brawl near as much, and it's like it was a whole new world. But Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is like the ultimate fan service video game. Not only
Yeah.
like Nintendo, which is the most important to me, but also just gaming in general now with how many characters and how much love is put into it. And it's still not nearly the perfect game with things like the online, which could definitely be better. Um, but
We were just playing that before we started tonight,
yeah,
actually.
I mean, I play it, but there's definitely a lot they can improve, especially in terms of competitive scene. There's a lot they could improve as well. But it's interesting because I had never had the competitive perspective before. So like when I was playing Smash Bros, it was always just me and my brother, and then like occasional friends, and then I never really went out and until Smash Bros Wii U when I was actually started seeing how good people were at the game and everything else that you could do with it. But I feel like Smash Bros Ultimate is the one I should go with, only because the other ones were kind of nostalgia bubbles, and this one I can actually look back at all of them and say that this one is so good. And the one I think I'm definitely best at, like not necessarily competitive level, but at least above average in terms of any other game I played. I'm probably the best at this one. So
Well, you're better than me, that's for sure. I can still take some games from you, but you're better than I am. So I'm still trying to grind out with certain characters online, and that's such a great game. It's a great pick.
And it's just there's so much content to it too.
Oh yeah.
I played so much online, takes up so much of my time that I still haven't beaten World of Light. I still have all the classic modes to do, all the single player stuff basically, which was like even if I just sat down to do all that, though, it'd give me hundreds of more hours. I've already put in over 200 hours on it, as is. So
yeah.
Awesome.
Well, it's funny you should mention that because that was actually the next game I was going to mention. It was not Ultimate, but was another game that came out a couple years ago now.
Overwatch.
Coming up on its 3-year anniversary is Overwatch. Yeah,
Okay.
You got that. I went crazy for this game when I got my PlayStation 4 in late 2016. I picked up this game. A friend of mine, super into it. He was like, "Hey man, you need to pick up this game so we can play." I instantaneously fell in love with this game. The characters are just oozing with personality. They're all different. They're all interesting. Even though they're not all my favorite to play, there isn't a single character in this game that I don't love in terms of a design standpoint. It's also one of the only games, like you were saying, one of the only games where I'm very interested in the competitive scene. So I watch Overwatch League. I haven't watched it as much. It's the second season. I haven't watched it as much this year as I'd like to. Because a lot of the games that I'm invested in are the Boston Uprising, my local team, or local in the sense of they're a franchise that's owned by a city that's near me. A lot of times the games are on late, or I just completely forget about the schedule because they changed the schedule a lot from the way it works last year. So I haven't watched nearly as much of that this year, but I am still invested. I still love keeping up on how everyone's doing, like how all the what trades going on, how different players are doing. So it's definitely a competitive scene that I love. I'm not especially great at the game. I'm like a gold in competitive. So I'm not really that good, but I literally bought the computer that I'm doing this on so I could play Overwatch on the PC.
Yeah.
And other games too, like Monster Hunter World, but primarily for Overwatch. I haven't played as much on this as I'd like to, because one of the friend that actually got me into it sort of fallen off the bandwagon with the game, which kind of is a little bit of a bummer to me. Um, but I still adore Overwatch. I mean, I started collecting so much Overwatch stuff. Be- Um, like for instance, I hate. Well, hate's a strong word. I strongly dislike the pop figures, the Funko pop figures.
Okay.
But I buy the Overwatch ones. I have basically all the Overwatch ones, I think, except for some exclusives here and there.
Hmm.
Um, man, like every time I'm buying them, I'm like, I hate these things, but I love it because it's Overwatch.
Why
And
you just hate the design, or?
well, yeah, it's just kind of like the eyes creep me out kind of on them, and the designs are just like so generic and But
I was never
uh,
a huge fan of them, but I mean, at the
yeah.
same time, it's like in a lot of ways, it's a celebration of nerd culture. So I'm like, I'm all for
It
that.
is. It is, but it's like it's almost become like too much at this point. They're for everything now.
They're too
It's like
mainstream.
they're too mainstream, man.
Oh no.
They're too popular. No, but it's just like I don't know. They're kind of cheap and yeah, but it's Overwatch, so I love it. I eat it up. Um, Figures sitting in boxes right next to me. I have a Widowmaker one and a Genji one. My favorite character Hanzo I have yet to pick up. And no, I'm not a Hanzo main, but he's my favorite character. Um, that's like a meme for the
Yeah.
game. If you're Hanzo main. Um, but yeah, I love the game. The aspect of teamwork. I was never huge into online games before this either. I'd like playing games online. I do it like every once in a while, but never nearly as much as with this game. Well, you have to be online to play it, um, but yeah, I completely fell for Overwatch, and it has some of its ups and downs in terms of what they're doing with it, but I'm really optimistic for the future, and I'm still going to be playing it for sure for
Hmm.
years to come.
All right. Yeah. See, that's another thing is I'm just the whole PC world I'm blind to as well. So
Yeah.
if I
Well,
if I had gotten into PC gaming rather than console gaming, I'd have a completely different list right now. But it's very representative of me. I've got all console games on here. I'm like, I can't
well,
even. Yeah.
I play Overwatch on PS4, I did for a long time, but
Yeah.
I still do because another mutual friend of mine, this other um, friend of mine who's fallen off the bandwagon, we still play a lot. Um, so like the recent event, we were playing that we're having a good time with that on console. I pretty much just play by myself on PC now. So I've talked to some other people, hoping to get more be able to get more people together for that. But anyway, what's your next game?
All right. So I'm still trying to figure out my final one. I'm just deliberating for like my final spot. So I'm gonna do the other one that I'm pretty sure of, and that's
We've got two more spots left.
yeah. But the other one I'm pretty sure of is Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door.
Mm.
And Paper Mario is just one of those. I'd like to say it's like one of my favorite series, but it's really like the first two games, and then I'm just hoping for an eventual return to form. Just even Paper Mario, I like rented it back in the day, but never finished it until like very recently, the original one,
Mm.
and that one still held up so well.
It
Uh,
has.
but
It really
oh,
has. I don't mean to interrupt, but
mm-hmm.
like a lot of those N64 games have not aged very well. Ocarina of Time among them. Paper Mario has aged like fine wine. That game still looks really good.
Mm-hmm. And like, but the Thousand Year Door was one that I really, really grew up with and like spent a lot of time with, and still to this day, I still think it's the best Paper Mario,
Mm.
and it just represents a lot of what I love in gaming in terms of RPGs as a genre. It's a very good introductory RPG, and um, more of like the fun kind of lighthearted dialogue as well. Is just so the dialogue is so good in the game, and just the way the world is presented, and the music is so memorable. Like the music is so nostalgic for me from both of the first two Paper Mario's, really, and just the entire the structure of the game is just made with so much love. You can tell no other Paper Mario or any other Mario game in that way is there that much love giving to like personalizing each character from like different Koopa Troopas that all have their own unique look and personality, and there's just so much to appreciate there. Um, it's just still it had such an impact on me that I still want a new Paper Mario in that same form, and so many people feel the same way. So it's like there's something special about that game that has made a lot of people think fondly of it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, funny you should mention RPGs. My next one is another RPG. This will come to also no surprise to people who know me personally. And that's Final Fantasy 13, the controversial title in the series, probably the most controversial title in the whole series. I adore that game, and I don't feel a need to really defend my opinion on it anymore. I mean, I will, but I know for a long time it was almost like because everyone when that game came out, everyone that I knew, and basically everywhere online, nobody liked that game, and there were all kinds of reasons as to why. And if you want to discuss that with me sometime, I don't know, ask me about it, because I can come up with a ton of reasons why I like that game and why I have responses to all the criticisms in that game. But
Skyward Sword too.
What?
And Skyward Sword too.
Well, Skyward Sword, I definitely can see why people don't like that game. I just don't agree with them because I love that game. But
there's that family of video games that are like shunned from the public for a while, and then like you have the dissenters, and then eventually the public opinion changes. And
since the kind of the hatred of that has died down over time, definitely finding a lot more people who really like that game now. 13 was one of the very first Final Fantasy games I ever beat. I shouldn't say play, because I had played Final Fantasy 6 and Final Fantasy 4 DS. I had beaten that game before I played through 13, and that game just meant so much to me that whole year that came out. I think it was one of the first games where I actually took a break, and I still do this with games sometimes. I actually take a break on it because I don't want the experience to end. Mm-hmm. So like I don't play it for a while sometimes. I've actually just done that recently with God of War because I feel like I'm getting towards the end of it. I've taken a break on that game for a little bit because I don't want it to end. I'm loving it so much. Final Fantasy 13 was one of the first games where I could see how, and everybody can argue with me on this, but it was the first game where like I was really invested deeply in a story and with characters that I could relate to. They had their flaws, they had all of their positive stuff, and you get to see it all play out on screen. And basically these 6 strangers getting thrust out into this huge, expansive conflict that it did such a good job of examining the intimate focus of certain characters at certain periods of time, but then also thrusting you out into this whole mythological spectrum, which like expanded beyond the game itself, and into their guidebooks and stuff that they release, where it's like you could really like delve into like the mythology and stuff. Some of the hints of that and such were in the game, but like I got really involved in this behind the scenes stuff with that game too, just like getting really in depth with just eating up as much information as I could of that game. Just that soundtrack, the graphics, which I think still hold up very well. I actually heard that the Xbox One X, the up-res graphics of 13 in particular, are amazing. Like that game looks like they really upscaled it really well. So if I ever get one of those, definitely look forward to playing that. So, but yeah, that was a huge game for me in terms of showing me what a narrative could be in a video game, and really getting me involved and invested in six characters that I just adore. Um, and I love the other two games in the series too. Actually, funnily enough, now that I mention it, Lightning Returns I still haven't beaten for that exact reason. I don't want it to end.
Hmm.
Um, but um, but yeah, I those games are means a lot to me. 13 for sure. So
Yeah. I just heard a boodle up. That probably showed up in the video. Damn, that noise. The
oh,
Discord
nuts.
loop. F you. F you, Discord. Yeah. Well, in terms of, in similar way, in narrative in video games, I'm trying to convince myself in these last two spots. I'm like, these are my five favorite games, but they're games that define me. So I'm
Yeah,
trying to pinpoint that. So I'm going to say Telltale's The Walking Dead.
yeah, that's a good,
And
nice.
that was like a turning point for me where it's like I've never been so emotionally infected by a video game until like that journey. And in terms of like a video game, it's not the best video game. Like even like some of the early episodes in that aren't even that enjoyable as a game to play. But the story itself and how the characters came together, and this handedly made me fall in love with Telltale, and I really like followed their games for a while after that. Um, and just something about the game had such an impact on me. Just the two main characters and their relationship together, and how they were able to take an existing franchise and really just turn it into its own thing. Um, it just made me fall in love with this side of gaming, which is like not is basically an interactive film, and just I've always loved the idea of like choices impacting the game,
Hmm.
even if they don't ultimately have a huge impact down the line. Just always the Telltale games were ones that stuck with me, and through like 2012, I think this game came out around there.
Yeah, it was 2012.
2012 and the few years after that, like Telltale really consumed a lot of my love for video games, and I just remember going to watching so many YouTube channels, playing through them and all the different ways they played it, and you could just see how so many different people were affected by it in
Mm,
similar ways.
absolutely.
So while I wouldn't put it in like my favorite games of all time, I'd say in terms of defining me, that really covers like storytelling and how you can do that powerfully in video games, even
Yeah.
with like the most minimal of gameplay at times.
So that brings me to my last one, and it's amazing how well these have all segued.
Yes.
Um, because my final game is another game which I haven't really talked about with you recently. I really haven't talked about much at all with anyone recently because of how long, 7 years ago it came out. Or no, was it 2013? I don't remember exactly now. Um,
Yes.
but that game is Katawa Shoujo.
Oh, yes.
Um, it's it's the bare minimum of a game because it's a visual novel. So visual novels are very basic when it comes to gamey senses of the term, because they're really just kind of choose your own adventure style games. I think the Zero Escape games are like as close as visual novels can get to being real games because they have kind of like first person point and click aspects in
Yes.
in
Escape room
certain parts of the
elements.
game. Yep. Um, which those games are awesome too. But Kitawa Shoujo, um, in terms of the topics that it delved into, handled all of them with such grace and maturity that I've never seen a video game handle. Um, relationships, depression, sex, um, all of them weren't never none of it ever felt like cheap or just kind of in there for fan service. And there's only really one path of the game where I'm like, yeah, the writing wasn't as solid on this one as the other ones because Guitar Shoujo is about literally translates to disability girls. It's about you're essentially the protagonist or the main character that you're sort of through the lens of is a character that has arrhythmia, and he has to be transferred to a school for disabled children. And well, it's like a high school, but everybody that you really interact with is all kind of in your grade or above your grade. So, and it's a very emotionally impacting game. I actually have been meaning to go back and play through it again. I just have to sort of steel myself because I did shed many a tear my first playthroughs of the game because there's 5 different paths. So it's a game that I feel has sort of gone by the wayside now. When it first came out, there was a lot of definitely a lot of love showered upon it. I was kind of looking through some of the old forums. The forum of Katawa Shoujo, again, fairly inactive these days, and kind of sad because it used to be, even for years after it came out, it was still very, very active. So it's kind of waned on that definitely over time, but it's a huge recommendation for anyone that wants to check it out. I can't recommend it for anyone under 18 because there is some mature content, shall we say, but it's very I think it was just a very significant game. It really helped me process some things about myself and kind of what I was looking for in relationships. And yeah, I just think it was spectacular, considering it was all made by amateurs, and it's free also,
Right.
which is you can't get better than free. So I would give them so much money if I could, but they never released really any official merch for it. The most that came out from it were some fan books that were released in Japan, like at Comiket, I think it's called. It's like the comic market. But
They never created. The creators never made anything after that.
they had, as far as I know, Four Leaf Studios. They were talking about planning on making some other game in the future. As far as I know, some of them kind of just sort of disappeared after the game came out. Some disappeared really before the game came out, actually. The composer, the soundtrack of that game is amazing. The composer was involved in the community for a little while. He released like a piano collections where it was just him playing the piano and just different arrangements of the music that he had. I think he had it for sale, and then he took it down, saying like it was basically like, I don't want to just be known for this. It was kind of his thing, but I remember being like, come on, man, like I want to pay you money for that because it was great. I think he basically archived it so that you could just download it wherever after that. But as far as I know, I don't know any of those people that are still doing stuff. But I know that there's a game. There's like another game that people who were inspired by it started development on a game like a couple years after it came out. That game still hasn't come out yet, and that's called Missing Stars, and it's another visual novel. It focuses a little bit more on mental disability, mental illness. So I don't know when that's ever going to come out. As far as development is still continued on it, though, even to now. So, but yeah, Katawa Shoujo for sure, big one.
Yeah, and along the same lines of emotional impact and helping me develop as I was growing up, my last one's going to be Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. And this I was so torn between, well, a couple different things, but I was torn ultimately between this and GoldenEye in terms of like what should define me, because GoldenEye is what got me into first-person shooters in the first place. But ultimately, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, I feel like is one of the first. I remember I played Call of Duty 4 and Call of Duty World at War on the DS, and those were my first experience with Call of Duty. And then I was like, I finally upgraded to a console Call of Duty, and that was Modern Warfare 2. And I got to experience the online for the first time, that whole online world. And even though I was infamous for being horrible people online, but I did actually meet some cool people through that, and it was still a lot of fun, like even playing with friends from real life too. And ultimately, Call of Duty has always kind of been there, and it's like I don't talk about it that much, but it's always been like a game I would go back to, and it's something I played with my brother a lot, hours and hours, and then I play with my friends whenever they came over. That was like the go-to game was Call of Duty, and I have like almost all the Call of Duties now, and even the ones that aren't great ultimately comes down to the same Call of Duty mechanics, and I can still enjoy it for that reason. And I think first-person shooters, though they're not like the biggest part of my gaming identity, it's still like a significant part there is first-person shooters. So I wanted that representation at least.
Mm.
And Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 is ultimately the most nostalgic for me in terms of like the online community and the experience, both single player as well was a big for me. But it was also just like a fun time in my life where I was just getting getting into video games, and that was one of the ones that helped do that. But yeah, so ultimately with my list, I was trying to touch on the different aspects of what I love about video games and the ones that impacted me the most growing up and still to this day. Because if I look at this list, and all of them are ones that can still enjoy today. None of them are ones that only exist in the past. So I tried to do that.
Likewise, yeah. Because I really wanted to try to focus like on, the sense of wonder when you're a kid. That was sort of the Zelda, but like focusing more on mature narrative ideas. The older that I got, that's kind of where I'm at now. I mean, Zelda is still super huge and very important to me. But like, yeah.
Yeah. Smash Bros. and Call of Duty kind of represent that whole multiplayer aspect of it, which has always been one of the things I love about video games. And Animal Crossing, Paper Mario, both are like just give you pure joy playing them, and Paper Mario
Nintendo fun.
Yeah. And then Walking Dead was more the story based aspect too. So it's kind of the whole shebang there. The hardest for me was not being able to include a Pokemon game. That was what I was.
Actually, honestly, same.
I was trying to get it in there. I just couldn't.
Yeah.
And
I couldn't either.
Even when I was listing Pokemon, I had 4 different Pokemon games as to what would be the choice for the option too.
Yeah, that's no question for me. But we can talk Pokemon in another video though, for sure.
Sure. Yeah, but yeah, like I said, I had a huge list. I had to narrow it down. And it's hard, but I'll definitely regret this in a couple days. So I'll be like, no,
why didn't I say that game? Why didn't I put Tales of Symphonia in there? That's what I was thinking.
I still haven't played the original Tales of Symphonia.
That's solid.
But
that was probably like a runner up. That was pretty important to me developmentally as well. But
yeah. Virtue's Last Reward you mentioned, that was actually one of the ones I was thinking about too. I've been playing that 999 with my brother, showing him that for the first time. So that's been cool.
They're such good games.
Yeah.
Such good games.
But yeah, you can see just between our two lists how different ours are too.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad. No, I'm actually really glad there was no overlap. That was really cool.
Yeah.
Because I know we have slightly similar tastes in some aspects, but like I'm not huge into simulation, so
right.
I know you love those, so.
Right. So yeah. Ultimately, my favorite genres are like simulations, RPGs.
Yeah.
First-person shooters a little bit, but actually platformers are one of my favorites. I didn't get any platformers in there.
Yeah, I didn't really either.
So like a 3D Mario game maybe is another one that I would have loved to have in there.
I wanted to put Super Mario 64, but Ocarina of Time really, I think, had a little bit more impact on me. I think maybe it was the delayed being able to play it thing that might have, the always looking forward to, and then actually finally playing it and it being everything I had seen them play, to feel it to play. So
in terms of nostalgia, it would have been Mario Sunshine for me. But like in pure like good game would have been Galaxy 2.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll do like a top 5 nostalgic games list.
Yeah.
Just make excuses to talk about different games and lists.
Absolutely. I love lists,
Yeah.
and so they're fun. As I always have a hard time like ranking, so like that's I think a free form works the best for me.
Hmm.
So
Just 5 things.
yep,
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it.
cool.
Thank you for watching. This is Tarqaron. You can look at this 10 list of games that definitively define Tarqaron, of course.
Mm.
And whenever we talk about how we love or hate something, then we can always draw back to this and our bias, inherent bias.
Top 5 things we hate. We can do some of those too.
5 games, yeah. 5,
5 popular games that we don't understand why people like.
5 games we just hate for no reason. All right, that's it. I don't know how to
All right,
end these things,
cool.
but it's fine.
So long.